Good evening, everyone. Those who are watching us on YouTube or in Zoom, you are welcome tonight to the second presentation by Sister Kaye Sehm. We're going to start with a word of prayer at this moment. If you can borrow your heads with me at this moment. Our precious Father that is in heaven, we are so thankful for what you are and what you do for us. Thank you, Lord, for giving us the health message and that we may be blessed tonight with the knowledge and with your blessings. Lord, we want to be in your hands the best tool possible. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, ready to start tonight? It's really good to be here. And this series, I'm bringing coming out of captivity, lessons from Hezekiah. Now, I believe there are many, many lessons that we can learn from the children of Israel. How they experience, what they went through, and so many times we can learn it. And what I want to do tonight is to go through lessons that can pertain to us right now, how these affect us right now. God said to Moses that he wanted him to build a sanctuary, and that he's telling us that tonight. He wants us to build him our sanctuary. He wants to dwell in our hearts. Now, we want to just go back a little bit to King Solomon. After David and then Solomon, and then we know that the kingdom was branched into two. We know there was 10 northern tribes and there was the 2 southern tribes. The northern tribes we know were called Israel. The 2 southern tribes were called Judah. Now, it's interesting that when God lists the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah, he says they're either good or bad. You know, it's not like there was no gray areas there. It was just like he was good. Now, the king that we're going to talk about for the start of this talk, this presentation this evening, is King Hezekiah. Now, King Hezekiah was a king in the 2 southern tribes, and he was a good king. He was faithful to God. And it says, 2 Chronicles 31, 20, 21, and thus did Hezekiah throughout all Judah, and wrought that it was good and right and truth before the Lord his God. And in every work that he began in the service of the house of God and in the law and in the commandments to seek his God, he did it with all his heart and prospered. Very interesting. Now, prior to his reign, all of Israel had become quite a subject of scorn to all the nations around. And many Israelites had been killed in battles with the enemy. Now, we know that the northern tribes were very close to being taken captive by the Assyrians. Now, we often hear about the captivity of the southern tribes, like with Daniel and how he was carried off into Babylon, but not as much is talked about the northern tribes when they went into captivity to Assyria. Now, this was about the time, just prior, was very close to the time that they were being taken into captivity. And some of them had already been taken away, but not all. So Hezekiah knew this, and he was, remember, king of the southern tribes. And he did not want this to happen to his nation. So he called on the Lord. He asked God, remember he was classed as a good king, and he asked God to come in and help him. So he asked the Levites and the priests to come to him, and he told them that he wanted to reopen the temple. See, the temple had been closed for many years. He wanted them to reopen it. But first of all, their job was they had to cleanse their own hearts. They had to cleanse their own selves. They had to sanctify and purify themselves before they were accepted to even do the cleansing of the temple. Then they got to work. The first thing they did was they cleansed the outer court. And the Bible says it took them 8 days to get this cleansed. Then the next step they had to do was cleanse the temple itself. Plus, they had to rebuild the doors and erect them and make sure that the doors were could open and shut. And the services were established. And the second part of it, to cleanse the temple, we are told also took 8 days. So we're told that it took 16 days in total to cleanse the sanctuary. Now, I'm going to come back to that thought a little bit later. But then Hezekiah had a special service in the temple. He called all the priests and the Levites together. They asked for forgiveness of sin for the nation. They offered sacrifices. They had choirs there. They were singing praises to God. They had decided to spend time in adoration to Him. So they worshipped God, and they were realized that they were being delivered from bondage of apostasy. Now, God was preparing the hearts of these leading men for a great reformatory movement that was coming in. Then Hezekiah decided that he wanted to reintroduce the Passover. The Passover, and I was checking up nothing, when was it last held? And you know what? I found that went right back to Solomon's time, just after Solomon's time. Now, this was nearly 250 years earlier, 250 plus years earlier. So there was no Passover that was conducted amongst the people. So he decided to reinstitute this Passover because he realized that there was terrible judgments were coming on the 10 northern tribes, and he'd heard about this. And remember, it was very close to the time when they were going into captivity. And he sent messages right around all of the tribes. He didn't just center on his own tribe down in the southern tribes. He sent messages to the whole of Israel, the 10 northern tribes. And sadly, few people did respond, but the majority, it says there that they laughed. 2 Chronicles 30 verse 10. When the messages passed from city to city through the country of Ephraim and Manasseh, even to Zebulun, they laughed them to scorn and mocked them. Can you imagine? They were asked to come to the temple to celebrate Passover with them, and the people laughed and mocked them. And then we know it was very soon that the people went into captivity. The northern tribes did go into captivity, and when the Assyrians came. And a very interesting comment I came across in Prophets and Kings 281, that the iniquity of Israel during the last half of the century before the Assyrian captivity was like that in the days of Noah and of every other age when men have rejected God and have given themselves wholly to evil doing. Okay, so now we find that huge crowds, they gathered at Jerusalem because they wanted to conduct the Passover. A week was spent in offering peace offerings and learning what God wanted them to do. And so they spent 7 wonderful days of communion with God. And at the end of the 7th day, Hezekiah was so impressed that he then designated they would spend another 7 days in the Passover. And daily they were offering thanksgiving and praise, and there was much joy in Jerusalem. It was evident that God was working marvelously for the backsliding Jerusalem and Judah. But there was one thing that they had to do. Every one of those participants had to go home, and in their own home, they had to get rid of the idols and destroy them. Now, God really worked through these people who are leaders in this reform movement, and he really did, because he was preparing them, and they prospered in their secular affairs. The whole country prospered. God brought them back into prosperous situation. Prophets and Kings, page 340. Since the days
Sister Kaye, can you hold it 1 second? Somehow we lost the sound. I think you are on mute, Sister Kaye. Check it out.
I did too. I didn't put it on mute. Someone else must have.
Okay. Now it's okay. Can you? We lost you for about 2 minutes.
Okay. I saw the screen go blank and I wasn't sure what happened. Okay, so I'll just recap where I think it was. Okay, we're just talking about Hezekiah's reign later in when the Assyrians were coming in. Okay, he heard that the Assyrians were planning to attack them. And they were really, really concerned. So Hezekiah went into the temple and he put the letter the Assyrian king said in front of him, in front of the Lord, and said, Lord, please help us. We need your help. We're desperate. We need help. And that very night, the Assyrian king was delivered into their hands. And actually it said there that the angel of the Lord went out into the camp and the Assyrians and slew 185,000 people that night. Of his men were slain that night. Now in Jerusalem, the hearts of the people were filled with holy joy. Can you imagine what happened back in Jerusalem when they realized they were the same thing that would have happened to the northern tribes was going to happen to them. But God miraculously intervened and saved them. He saved them. Hezekiah trusted God to save them, and he did. Sadly, we know that probably it was about 100 years later, the Babylonians did come in and take Judah as a captive. But then later, we know Hezekiah fell sick. And Isaiah came to him and told him, get your house in order, you're going to die. Hezekiah went before the Lord and pled. Hezekiah said, and this is in Isaiah 38:3, and he said, remember now, O Lord, I beseech thee, how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore.
There's nobody in the church except Harold.
And then came the word of the Lord to Isaiah, saying, Go and say to Hezekiah, Thus saith the Lord, and the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears, and behold, I will add unto thee 15 years of life. He had served God faithfully, and the people had been strengthened spiritually. So he pled before God to spare his life, and God heard this plea of his servant. He received a message, and he was told that God would heal him and add another 15 years to his life. Many of us have heard this story. We've heard about the story of the poultice of figs placed on Hezekiah, and he asked for a sign that the message was heard, but this message was from heaven. And he asked that the sundial would be turned back 10 degrees. And what did God do? Well, no, God did miraculously heal him, and God did turn the sundial back 10 degrees. Now, this was noticed in Babylon. The Babylonians had noticed that the sundial had gone back 10 degrees. So they sent ambassadors, they sent an envoy to Jerusalem to find out what had happened. They'd heard Hezekiah had been sick, and they thought they'd offer him, and they'd say, what happened to you? Now, this was Hezekiah's opportunity. He received the men. And as he received the men, how easy would it have been for him to say and tell them about the living God? How God had healed him. How God had saved them from destruction. And how God had turned the sundial back. But you know, Hezekiah failed. Prophets and Kings 3:45 says, But pride and vanity took possession of Hezekiah's heart, and in self-exaltation he laid open to covetous eyes the treasures with which God had enriched his people. So the king showed them all the riches of the kingdom. He went in there and he showed them everything. And you know what? The Babylonians remembered this. And when it was less than 100 years later, but when they came back, they remembered all these treasures were there in Jerusalem, and they took them away to Babylon. And not only that, there was also going to be that they were going to take Hezekiah's descendants away to Babylon, and they were going to become eunuchs to the king of Babylon. Thankfully, Hezekiah repented, and he was filled with remorse, but the evil was sown and would eventually result in the harvest of desolation and woe. Now, this is the important lesson for us today. There are many people we can influence with what we say and what we do. And sometimes it's for good, but sadly, sometimes it's not for good. It's for the worse. And the true follower of Christ will always aim to strengthen and upbuild those who come into contact. They come into contact with him. And I believe the lessons we can learn from this story, God wants to call us back to him. He wants our temples open. You know, so many of us have got so much rubbish in the courtyard. Now, by the courtyard, I believe that's by what we do, by maybe what we say or how we live. That is how we have our courtyards caught up with rubbish. And we also have to have our temples cleansed. And that's comprising of what we think and our thoughts and our motives. And remember how long it took? It took 16 days to cleanse. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to take 16 days to cleanse us, but it need not take years and years and years of counseling. Because many of us, as I said, have piled up this rubbish in our heart that has to be cleansed away, and it's only God that can cleanse away this rubbish of our heart. We have to rely on him to do it. And I believe he can do it. And that's why I heard, when I said last night, when I heard about how God can pray, we can pray by walking through the sanctuary, taking the steps of God, walking through the sanctuary. Now, there are 7 steps we can take by using the sanctuary, the furniture in the sanctuary, and walking through this in prayer. We can actually ask God and he will heal us. First thing we have to do is make a decision to start. And some of you might think, well, where do we start? Where do I start? Now, some years ago, or 2 years ago, it's not some years ago, I can remember back clearly. It was not even just almost 2 years ago when I spent time in your church. I handed out a little booklet. It was just a photocopied booklet, and it's called Praying Through the Sanctuary. And it takes that. First of all, you pray in the sanctuary, you go through the gate, then you go to the laver, then you go to the gate, and then to the altar, and then to the laver, and to the candlesticks, the table of showbread, to the altar of incense, and to the most holy. And going through there and walking step by step with God through your prayers, he will heal you. He can heal you. And I also have added information, which I shared with you yesterday, a newsletter which I wrote on, this is not the one, True Spiritual Healing, but it's number 77. It's a Back to Eden newsletter. Now, I have that little book, this little booklet is available as a PDF, which you can download from my website under the spiritual section. Plus, you'll see a whole section there that has all my past newsletters. And if you want the one on spiritual healing, I remember that that's number 77. And I thought, when I wrote this newsletter and I saw number 77, I thought, isn't this the providence of God? It's not my doing. I just chose to do it when number 77 came up. But what I wanted to finish off with is to realize it is most important of us to dig deep in our hearts, because Hezekiah still had things deep in his heart. Now, God cannot afford to allow the 144,000 to have still things that are hidden in their hearts. He cannot afford that. He has to get rid of all of that now beforehand. So he's allowing us to come across trials and troubles in our life. And, it's everywhere. All of us is happening. What's happening in this world we have now? All what's happening with this whole situation with COVID. Some people are reacting different than others. It's just bringing out things in people that you think, oh, I didn't realize that was still in my heart. Some people are fearful. Some people are just, but some people have got peace. But what we have to do, how do we treat people? It's bringing us out so many things. And you know what? In a strange way, I'm thankful to God for it, because it's really bringing us closer to him. Well, it should be bringing us closer to him. It can be used by him to bring us closer to him. And so what we need to understand is that we can come out of a captivity. We have to be healed, because if he wants us to use us to reach people, remember I said last night, and this is the point of these little talks at the beginning of my talks when I'm going to change the direction and go into poultices, but we will never be successful in giving poultices if we are not cleansed in our heart. We have to have Christ's Spirit working through us. These remedies will not be working like they need to work unless God's Spirit will work through us and change us. And for us to be changed, we have to be cleansed. We have to be totally cleansed of all this rubbish. It's easier if I can understand it. All these hurts, all these emotional things that have happened. Remember, they're roots of bitterness that Satan has planted in every single one of our hearts, and they have to be removed. So that's my prayer for all of us, that we understand that, and that we can start that healing. We have to have it, because if we don't start it now, we'll miss out. Now I'm going to divert and just spend a moment, and I'll get my other screen up. I hope I can get this right. I have to share screen and go here. Okay, hopefully that's right. Okay, I'm going to share tonight talks about home remedies, and these tonight are going to be on poulticing. Okay, now you might say, well, what is a poultice? My screen cleared. Okay. What is a poultice? So maybe some people here will know, and they'll be very confident because they've used many poultices in the past, but there's always someone who is attending these things and they have never, ever heard before what a poultice is. So I thought, what is a poultice? It's an application of any moist vegetable, plant, fruit, oil, or herb formed into a paste and applied directly to an affected area of the body. They are used to either draw out infection, fluid, or an embedded article from the skin. They break up congestion and they relieve symptoms and ailments. Now, poultices also can be used to soothe inflamed areas such as joints and muscle pain, irritating coughs or bruises. So we can use them for lots of different things. Now, the important thing I want you to understand, when you're using poultices, they need to be moist. They can be applied directly to the skin. It's easy to apply when poultice is folded into a small parcel, and this can be secured in place with a bandage or plastic wrap. Now, as it says there, you can apply a poultice anyway. Now, that does not mean to say, I'm going to share with you how I'm going to fold them into a little parcel, but you don't have to. They can be put straight on the skin. But I can tell you, I can still remember when I very first learned to do this, I was doing a potato poultice, and I was doing it on my chest area. And did you know that I can still remember all the bits of grated potato that were dropping around everywhere, and I thought, well, this is not too good. And then I heard that you just fold it into a bit of cloth. And what I usually use is, I usually use a bit of, say, Chuck's super wipes, like I've got here. But you don't have to use them. You can use anything you want to. You can use a paper towel. You could use a piece of cloth, a rag or something like that, but you secure it in place. So you don't have to use it like I'm saying, but they're powdered herbs that are formed into a thick paste with a little water, herbal tea oil, or whatever you use, okay? Now, vegetables can be grated or bruised to release their juice. So what I've done here, I've got a little one here of some flaxseed just wet and put into a little parcel, or you can drizzle oil directly on a paper towel, or you can mix it into a thing. And the one on the right is a just grated potato. Now, you need to change them look, there's not a hard and fast rule on this, but for seriously draining wounds, change them every 30 minutes, then every 1 hour, then 2 hours, and 4 hours. Don't leave longer, as it will be filled with toxins and the skin will reabsorb it. But for less acute injuries, our wounds, you may leave it on overnight, cover with a plastic bag and secure it as it will leak. Now, if you're going to leave it on overnight, and you're going to bed with it, especially if it's on somewhere, it will leak. You rest assured it will leak, and it will leak all over your sheets, and it stains. Potato especially stains on your sheets, and it just really makes the whole experience just something that you just wished you would have never done. Okay, so it's best, and many times I've just popped an entire big garbage bag over my leg to trap all those, anything that that would just come off, any moisture that will come off. And then I will the garbage bag's huge, but I just tape it loosely around a few times with a little bit of masking tape, and it just formed a little bit more to fit the leg, or even an arm or something like that. But you do need to do that. Now, the other thing is, if pus develops, discontinue. Now, this is important. You need to expose it to the air and sunshine if it is needed. Sometimes pus will develop. And if you're doing a poultice, back on base, one little poultice, then another one, and then another one, and then another one, you need to let your surface of your sore or whatever wound or whatever you're treating, look at it and say, oh, look, I think I'll need it to air it out, expose it to sunshine. Don't just be mindful of that. So just watch the injury, because there's no one hard and fast rule on all of this. Okay, so how to make a poultice. Okay, first of all, you apply a herb to a cloth. And as I said, it needs to be wet. Then to wrap it up, you fold the edges over all on the top. You fold one side, then the second side is over the top, then the third side, and then the fourth side. All are folded on one side. Then you lift up the poultice, and on the other side of the poultice that only has one thickness of cloth to it, that's the side that goes directly on your injury or your wound. And then you secure it in place. Sometimes I wrap it up in plastic wrap, using that as a bandage, or sometimes I'll put over a firmer piece of plastic and wrap a full bandage around it. There's no one hard and fast rule that you need to do, but you need to secure it in place. Now, if you're going to do a potato poultice, this is an excellent drawing poultice. Now, what I've shown here is I've grated up, and this is the size. This is just a box grater with the size there that I've just used, the apple grater size, which we call apple grating size, and I've just grated it. Now, the point, it needs to be wet, but if it is too wet, it will just drip everywhere, and it just defeats the purpose. But if you were using it and you wanted to put this poultice over a large area, you maybe decided, oh, it's going to take me forever to grate it, so you might want to throw your potato into a food processor and process it there. And so it will be processed, and it will be very nice in the food processor. But yet, then it will get wet. It will just become too wet. So maybe you will have to add something to it. Like you could add charcoal, or you could add Epsom salts to it, which would also help it. Or you could even add flour, but you could add something dry that will just absorb a little bit of that moisture, because you don't want it to be dripping. It needs to be moist, but not dripping. So, and it doesn't hurt to interchange any of these. This, just because I'm saying this is potato, this is a cayenne poultice, or whatever it is, you can mix these together. And there's no rule that says you can't have potato with charcoal, or potato with any of the other things that I'm going to share with you tonight. So we have to realize that you can just grate, and then I would fold those edges together and apply it. Now, potato, draw poultice, always used raw, as heating destroys its healing properties. The potato has alkaline characteristics that has drawing powers and is rich in potassium and phosphorus. And these chemicals are important to normal nerve and muscle response, heart rhythm, and intercellular fluid pressure and balance. So what happens is that as you put your poultice on your injury, an exchange takes place. Properties of what you have in your poultice are going to go in through your skin into your tissues of your body. And toxins from within your body are going to exchange, and they're going to be drawn into your poultice. Now, potato is good for drawing the following. Now, you can take potato poultice, potato internally. You can make potato juice in your juicer and you can drink it. It is really good. Or you could just grate your potato and you could have it somehow raw and you could eat it. It's not exactly the choicest of vegetable to eat raw. It's good for inflammation, for liver detox, for stomach ulcers, for vomiting, for acid stomach, for diarrhea, for indigestion, for heartburn, for heavy metals. And you could even, but then as you can apply it externally for ingrown toenails, splinters and prickles, swellings, and burns. It is excellent for burns. I've heard a report about some person they were caught in an explosion and they were burnt all over their face. And they just lay them down and they just put continual poultices over their face every 10 minutes or so. And gradually the time increased before the changes. But that will actually help and it'll soothe the pain because it's so cold. So if it's using burns, if you're using a burn, you use a potato poultice. But sometimes if you were burnt yourself, you don't have time to quickly go and get a potato poultice ready. That's if you've got somebody there ready to do it. And if you were doing the heaps, then you would obviously put it in a food processor. If you've got it, if you haven't, you just got to take a grater. Or I've even had somebody, they've had potato poultice and they've just actually sliced it up and put it across the slices, the rings across their forehead and tied a band around. As I said, there's no rule that says you have to apply this poultice this specific way. But yet, it is much tidier and less of a nuisance when you've got to clear it up and it just drips everywhere. But you can use it on abscesses and boils. It's good for deep drawing, brains, sprains, bruises, ulcers. Excellent for leg ulcers. People have any ulcers, but excellent for leg ulcers. Great for arthritis, inflamed eyes. So you can use it in any of these ways. And if I was looking for an inflamed eye, I would just make a very small little poultice and maybe like this, just put it over the eye area like that. One on each eye if you have to. Usually if you've got some sort of, we call it conjunctivitis or pink eye, one eye, you really need to treat both eyes because it's quite likely that it's going to go over to the other eye as well. But for arthritis and inflamed eye, so you can use it for all of these things. And as I said, it's used for internally for indigestion, heartburn, for stomach ulcers, for acid stomachs, and it's good for a living cleansing formula. If you want to cleanse your liver, grate and mix together with a half an apple and one medium potato. Grate this, take this before breakfast each day for 4 to 6 weeks. Now next I'm going to deal with the onion poultice. Now this is an antibiotic poultice. Onions absorb morbid matter. It can be used for absorbing toxic fumes. For instance, you can use it to absorb, you can cut them on, put them on a plate next to your head. Now onions can be used raw or they're cooked. Now when do you use it raw and when do you use it cooked? Well, generally I will use it cooked for the lung ones, the lung treatments. For instance, if you're treating bronchitis, influenza, asthma, colds, or congestion or coughs. So they're on your lung area. Because I can remember back years ago when I was first learning this, I thought, oh, look, I will put an onion poultice on. I thought I had a bit of bronchitis, so I thought, oh, well, I'll put it on. And I used cold onion. And I actually thought it made it worse. But since then, when I realized I should have used heated them up and put them on my chest, And then I thought, oh, so that's the difference. And then so you put it up, you put them on your chest, and you make it, fold them into a, you don't have to, I've even put them directly onto the chest, onto the skin of the chest, because when you have them, they're actually a little bit sort of like sticky and they'll stick to your skin. And if you're laying down, they will stay there in place. But if not, fold them into a poultice and just apply them to your chest area there. And usually what I do after that, I put maybe a hot water bottle on the top of that just to keep it warm for a little bit longer. And this is the onion healing. This is the one for healing for earaches. If you take an onion and bake it in the oven for about a half an hour, cut the onion in half, and then you get a cloth. I usually use a hand towel like this. And then I will put my cut onion in the hand towel because it's pretty hot. You don't want it to burn you. And you put it, the cut side towards your ear, and you put it across your ear. Then as it cools down, you will just pull back one layer of the cloth and you will let it, and then you can handle it. But if you cannot, you must be careful, obviously, not to burn yourself. But the fumes penetrate down into your ear canal and they bring healing. Now, if you're going to do for coughs and for croup, this is an excellent way to make cough medicine. You just slice or chop into small chunks and layer with some good raw honey. And you let this for 2 to 3 hours and then strain the liquid into a clean jar and take the teaspoon every 15 minutes or often as required. And it tastes nice, especially for little kids. They love this. They will like taking this one. And as you drain it off, it will keep for a few months in your fridge if you just strained it off. It's not like you have to throw it away straight away. But you can keep it and you can use it for cough medicine. And you can take as much of it as you want to. Okay, for congestion head, you first slice an onion on a plate and leave it near your bed overnight. A poultice can also be placed on the soles of each foot and secured in place with glad wrap and or bandages. Depending on the size of your foot, make a poultice about that size. Now, before you do, I would cut my onion into rings. I would just lay them here quite heavily, maybe put a full onion to one foot. Then I would get a rolling pin on a board with my poultice, which I've already put in the cloth, and just roll the rolling pin heavily over this and bruise it. Then I would put it on the sole of the foot, and then I would wrap a bandage or plastic wrap around to keep it in place. Now that is excellent for coughs, colds, yes, for colds too, but more for coughs and for asthma. Now, many times people who've got asthma, you can put them on the soles of their feet, and that will actually help. But as I said, they need to have, the cough. You need to be able to keep it in place, and you need to be able to keep it on the soles of their feet. Now, the other thing is, which they do, is if you have, and they have, you can put it in coughs. I'm getting myself muddled up here. That you can put this in and put it on the soles of your feet for if you have coughs, and if you have a little kid who has coughing and coughing and coughing and coughing, and you can't break that cough, you put it on the soles of your feet, and that will break that coughing on the soles of your feet. And for chest complaints, as I said, this is the way that I do it for chest complaints. I steam sliced or chopped onion over boiling water for 7 minutes. Don't immerse the onion in the water. Spread the onion on a cloth and allow to cool a little before applying it to the chest area. Cover with a cloth, applying a hot water bottle over this, making sure it's not too hot. When it cools, you can reheat the same onions one more time and then reapply. Don't apply cold onions on chest infections. And as I said, I learned that the hard way. For edema, you can actually drink the water in which your onions have been boiled. This will aid in the removal of excess fluid and also good for inflammation of the bowels. Okay, so I know I'm going through these poultices quite quickly, but I wanted to get as many as I could into the one program here. Then I'm going to do cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is a natural stimulant. It is a systemic stimulant, not a neurological or nervous system stimulant. It does not irritate the stomach or digestive system, such as black pepper, mustard, or chili. Okay, so it creates a heat influence that revitalizes the cells, arteries, veins, and the stomach, the intestines, the heart, and the blood without causing a blister or burn. And as long as the poultice is creating heat, it is still effective. Now, this is really interesting because if you put a poultice on, you can create incredible heat. It will actually increase your circulation. You can use this internally for heart failure. Now, I still remember I was having a class here in my home, and I was telling a story about how a lady was in a class of my friend Barbara O'Neill's, was running a class, and she said that this lady was in her class and she had a heart attack in the class. And Barbara went and she got some cayenne pepper and immediately gave the cayenne pepper to this lady. And just like that, she was just revived. Now, there's different ways you can give this cayenne to people. You can just put it, even if you usually give them a sip to take, you put it in water, you give them a sip, because they will sort of react and they will sort of take it in. But I was in my class and this lady who was in my class put her hand up and she said, "Oh, excuse me, I was that lady. It did happen to me." And she said, you don't taste it. When you've got it in your mouth, you don't taste it, because she said, you've lost your consciousness to react to that sort of thing. But immediately that cayenne will increase the circulation and will bring your heart back. And it increases the power of all other agents, and it stops internal bleeding. I can still remember one lady, she came to me and she said, "My elderly mother has a bowel bleed." And she said she has these all the time and the doctors don't know what's causing it. And I said, "Well, take cayenne pepper." And so she took cayenne pepper. She didn't take that much because it was late at night when she gave her the first two. I think she only gave her about 2 doses. But then in the morning it had stopped, and the lady went to hospital, but it stopped within 1 or 2 days, and normally it would take 10 days. So I know that it stops internal bleeding. And I also had one other report. One lady, she came, and I know this lady, she was going through a change of life and she was having incredibly heavy periods, heavy bleeding. And so she was told, take three teaspoons of cayenne pepper every hour on the hour for 3 days. And she did, except when she was sleeping. And she said at the end of that 3 days, that bleeding completely stopped. And she said to me, she said, "You know what, I could take it easier, the 3 teaspoons of cayenne pepper, if I put it in soy milk." So, I don't know about that one. I would find it hard to do that. But she did it, and she said, she sweat, and she said, "Look at me." She said, "I've never had to have a hysterectomy. I was fine." Okay, it encourages peristaltic action, good for colds, flus, sinus problems. Oh, that's something else. Cayenne peppers, yeah, or coughs. So people have coughs or colds. I can remember one lady had a coughing fit in one of my classes, and somebody just went and got some cayenne pepper and gave it to her, and she said, she sort of gagged a little bit at it, but the coughing stopped, and she said, "Wow, I can't believe it," just like that. Yeah. So just realise now you can do it externally too. Use cayenne pepper externally for shocks, for ulcers, sore throats, arthritis, cuts, bleeding, colds, extremity, for cracked heels, for cramped muscles, and for pain. Now what you do here is you take it and you can put it on. If I generally used to, you put it on the soles of your feet. This is excellent once again for heating your whole body. But I want you to remember this. This will towel, and it will get hotter and hotter and hotter. And I've often put this on a paper towel and then drizzled oil over the paper towel. It could be castor oil if that's all you've got, but it could also be any oil. It could be cooking oil if you've only got that. And drizzle all that, then sprinkle cayenne pepper lightly over that. Now, don't go too heavy because people will react. Now, when they first put it on, people say, oh, it doesn't hurt, or it doesn't get hot. But after a while, it certainly will. And I said, look, if it gets too hot, I can remember doing this on one young fellow who was a rugby player for his country. Now, rugby is quite as a sport, like a football. It's a football sport. Okay, and he had a sore ankle, so I put it on his ankle, this whole poultice. And really interestingly enough, I said, if it gets too hot, just take the poultice off. There's no disgrace in taking the poultice off. And would you believe that this rugby player had less tolerance than a little old lady who was just there, and they can put it on. They can have it on their ankles for hours because just somehow or other, maybe it's got to do with their circulation, I'm not sure, because it does increase circulation and it does heat up. But another way you put this cayenne poultice off is you make 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon, and I'd suggest 1/4 teaspoon at first. Mix it with 1/4 cup of flour, add water to make a paste, and apply to a cloth and place it directly on. Now, this is ideal for people with arthritic knees. And I can still remember I was in a class in Fiji, and I got the class there, and I put the oil cayenne poultice on one of the students' one knee, and I put this one on the other knee. And I said, now, which one is hottest? And he said that this one definitely was. So the other one is slower, but this one you get more heat with it. Now, cayenne pepper oil can also be made and applied to cramps, muscles, and arthritic joints. You mix 2 tablespoons of cayenne into 2 cups of olive oil. You leave for 2 weeks and strain. Now your oil is ready for use. Okay, then we go into charcoal. Now, charcoal is, as I said, incredible. This is the universal antidote for poisoning. Now, charcoal has the ability to adsorb up to 80 times its own body weight in gases and impurities. Now, its extensive absorbency properties makes it the #1 choice in combating poisons and neutralizing it. And it's a natural antiseptic and due to its oxidizing properties. So charcoal can be used so much for poisoning, it's the universal antidote for poisoning. Now, you can use it externally. Bruises, inflammations, ulcers, sores, stings, bites, infections, poisonous bites, swelling. You can use it as a teeth whitener. You can use it for toothache, for kidney infections, congestion, for any congestion. I've heard of people, they've actually used it they've taken a little tea bag, which you maybe get herbal tea in, cut it open, and they put a spoon of charcoal in there, folded the tea bag over, and they've used it for toothache. They said it works extremely well for your toothache. Kidney infections. I've worked on one woman who was supposed to have kidney dialysis, and I knew that you could put kidneys on her charcoal poultices on her kidneys, which will absorb the toxins out of her kidneys. So you can do this anywhere. You could put it on a liver if you have an infected liver. You could have this anywhere. I've heard of people who are absorbing it and they're bringing it out of there. They've even had cancers, inoperable cancers in their head. So they've got it, but they've actually been able to put a poultice on over their head, and their tumours have reduced in size. Look, I believe these are God's simple remedies, and his healing is behind all of these. We ask God to heal as we're doing these remedies. You know something, he's going to do it. You can use charcoal internally for flatulence, bad diarrhea, nausea, overdoses, vomiting, upset stomach, poisonous bites, liver detoxes, poisoning. So you can use charcoal, and you could especially use it for anaphylactic shocks, for, as I said, for diarrhea, for nausea, for overdoses, for drug overdoses, you do it. And you can't overdose charcoal. The only thing you must do is you must take it with a lot of water. You can't. It will bottle up if you don't take it with a lot of water. So you really need to get the charcoal. And it's good as a general detox for doing it. And what I'm talking about here is activated charcoal. But you know something? If all you had was the charcoal in your wood fire, use that. That is going to work as well. Activated charcoal is probably 2 to 3 times more effective, but it is still effective. This one out of your fire is still effective. Now, how do you make charcoal poultices? First of all, you mix some powdered charcoal with just enough water or oil until your thick paste is achieved, and you can apply it directly to the area. You let it dry and then replace it with a new poultice. Now, a different method is to mix it with 2 tablespoons, that capital tablespoons, of ground flax seeds in 1/4 cup of water. Add 2 tablespoons of charcoal into the ground flax seeds. Spread a thick layer into chucks or thin or cotton cloth or whatever you do. Fold into a small parcel and apply to the affected area. Cover with a plastic wrap and secure with a or bandage. Now this is important. If it's a very serious wound or whatever, you change poultice every 3 hours. You discard the old poultice and replace with a new one. A hot water bottle or wheat pad over the poultice neck increases its efficiency. But you can leave poultice, these sort of poultices up to 8 hours. It's not absolutely essential, but it'll be determined by how serious the injury is. Now, the next method is using a teaspoon of psyllium, 4 tablespoons of charcoal powder, and apply a 1/2 cup of water and make like a jelly, make a jelly-like paste. Now you roll this out between 2 sheets of Glad wrap or plastic, and you take your top layer off, the Glad wrap off, and you put that directly onto your wound. Now this is one that you can actually roll out, place in a sealed bag and frozen to be used at a later date. Because sometimes you want to have something like this, excellent for skins, and you need to have it ready in your freezer. Because if you're outside and you get bit by a wasp or a bee or something, I can still remember my husband recently, not so only a couple of months ago, got bitten by a wasp. I immediately went in and made a charcoal poultice, popped it on his leg, and he was right. There was no pain, no after it. But if it was me who was bitten and I'm alone, how am I going to, it's just too painful to do all this. So I need to have one ready in the freezer to use, and it's ideal to have one. But you need to put it in the freezer. Don't keep your used charcoal poultices in your fridge made up, because they will absorb all the odors out of your fridge into them. Now, another way is you can have in a Ziploc bag, and you have your teaspoon of psyllium and your 1/4 cup of charcoal powder in a Ziploc bag, and you just mix it together. Then you add 1 cup of water, you close the bag again and place dry mixture. Reading it there again. You add your water and mix using your hands to massage the bag, and after about 5 minutes it'll be ready. And you cut open the front of the bag and you apply it as dissolved. So that's really good if you wanted to have that mixture ready, made up. So all you have to do is add the water when it would be ready. This is like another form of having one ready to be made up, like you would have the one I just told you with the freezer. Okay, our next one we're talking about is castor oil. Now, castor oil is really a miracle oil. And by the way, I must tell you that that charcoal remedy, this book here is excellent for all the information on charcoalremedies.com by John Dinsley. Excellent with all his information that he has on the charcoal, because you can use it for so many different things. And I've got one of my newsletters is on charcoal, another one is on castor oil, one is on clay, and you go through all these different things. But the one I'm going to share with you now is on castor oil, because it breaks down lumps, cysts, nodules that should not be there in your body. It penetrates the skin to underlying tissues and breaks up the congestion, lump, tumor, which is taken away through the colon, which is a major eliminatory organ of the body. So that means if you put a castor oil, if you put a poultice on your liver, it's not going to draw out into the poultice. It's going to be dispersed via your own waste eliminative systems in your body. Externally, you can use it for constipation, bowel cancers, cysts, stomach cancer, bone spurs. Often you would directly rub it onto your heel area or wherever you've got a bone spur, calcium deposits, ganglions, moles, warts, skin cancers, hemorrhoids, tumors, sunspots, kidney stones, gallstones, liver congestions, sciatica, eyes, lumps. Now, if I was going to put it on my liver area, I would put a poultice probably about that size. I would just drizzle my castor oil over the cloth, and I would put it on my, my area just underneath, where my liver is. I'd put it on that area. Then I'd put a piece of plastic over that, and I'd secure it in place with a bandage or with, sometimes I've secured it in place with Glad wrap. That's one way we can do it too. Not sure where I was up to there. Moles, warts, skin cancers, hemorrhoids, tumors, sunspot, kidney stones, gallstones, I think I've said that, sciatica, eyes and lumps. Now, another way you can put it on your eyes, if you put a drop, don't dip your finger into the bottle and decide to put it on your eyes. Put just a few drops out onto the palm of your hand, put your other finger in there and just wipe it across your eyes like that. It will stop dry eyes, it will stop all those things that people complain about. Helps so much. Okay, castor oil application, and this is what I just told you. What you just drip your castor oil over the top of this cloth. Don't make it dripping. You need to be careful with it. Don't put too much. Put it to your area, put a piece of plastic over it and secure it in place. The castor oil can stain your clothes, so use old clothes when doing this poultice. The use of a hot water bottle or a warm wheat bag is very helpful over the top of that, especially if it's a liver area. This poultice is very good for constipation, for fibroids, lung congestion, liver congestion, etc. Now, if you've got fibroids, women who have fibroids, you put it over your abdomen area, just above your pubic bone, and you do this poultice, which is really in the same place you'd put it for if you have constipation. You put it over your stomach area. We're not talking about taking this castor oil internally for this particular treatment. We're talking about externally. Now, how do you do it for hemorrhoids? I just thought what you do is you take a cotton ball, soak it in castor oil, and you put it right and you freeze it in your freezer. You take it out of your freezer and it is frozen and it's cold. You pop it right next to it. You can't put it into the rectum, but you put it right next to the rectum where the hemorrhoid is, and you allow the buttocks of to shut on it and keep it in place. And it will stay in place, and that shrinks the hemorrhoids. You might have to do it a few times, but that is excellent, and it's so soothing to a hemorrhoid. Now, for constipation, you place your poultice over your abdomen, and for lumps and spurs, you rub your castor oil in the problem area, and then you place it, and for sometimes you might want to pack over the top of it. Sometimes you just might want to just put your lumps and spurs. Now for bentonite clay, that absorbs your toxins. Very similar property than that charcoal has. But I use it in a little bit different way because bentonite clay has the ability more to stick. You make a paste with it and it'll stick to your skin. You have a paste of 1 clay to 3 parts water. You apply to your area, you cover with a plastic, and then as it dries, it will draw the impurities through your skin and it will nourish your skin. And when it's dry, it's finished. And so you just take your plastic off, you just brush it aside, you brush the excess off, and if you want to, you can apply another one, another poultice over the same area. Externally, you use for broken bone, and you could do it thin or you could do a thick poultice. It will depend on what you prefer. For broken bones, for insect bites, for poisonous bites, for swellings, for molds, for shingles. It reduces pain and inflammation. It cleans ulcers and abscesses. It's great for beauty masks. It's great for fading tattoos. It's good for cataracts. It's good for baths to detox. Now, where I got all this information from is this book called Living Clay by Perry A. And she talks about bentonite clay. How so good for us to use bentonite clay because it is so good for us. And it works in a similar way as does charcoal. Now, to make a poultice drinker, but how do you drink charcoal? Because if you just mix charcoal in water, it just floats on the top. So what I do is I blend 1 part of clay to 10 parts of water, and I put it very, very briefly in my blender, and I immediately pour it out into a glass jar, and I store it in glass because clay does not like metal, has a chemical reaction with metal. And then this concentrate, I add probably around about 1/4 cup of water to drink. Now you maybe want a little bit less, just depends. For some people who are very toxic, you would need to have less. For those people who've been working on their cleansing in their body, you will be able to take more. But internally, you take it for detoxing. It's mineral rich. You can take it for diarrhea, for anemia, for lower your cholesterol. It'll draw out radiation, heavy metals and drugs, as does charcoal too. But this one specifically, in this book here, it says draws out radiation. One of the very few things it does. It's good for acid reflux, digestive problems, increases circulation. It pulls out liver spots. It's great for diabetics. It balances your hormones. It expels worms and parasites. Now, the last one I've got for you tonight is Cabbage Poultice. Because cabbage absorbs poisons from the poisonous juices in the body. It carries away stale blood and builds up fluid in tissues that are badly bruised and swollen. Now, you use your outer leaves, they're probably better. Now, on the left-hand side of the page, you will see a drumhead cabbage. Now, I would cut out the centre stalk and bruise it with a rolling pin on a breadboard. But can I tell you that they are not wet enough. I had a very interesting experience when I was in Tonga. There was a gentleman who came to me. He had incredibly swollen legs. They were swollen from diabetes. And they were huge. And I looked at them and I thought, I need to do some poulticing on them. And I had a group of Fijian women. We were all there helping together. And we were doing the poulticing, and we put them, first of all, I used the potato poultice, but I didn't have enough potatoes because it's not something that they have readily there. They use more cassava and sweet potatoes and all those sort of things. So I decided to go into the cabbage, and this is the cabbage that I had, the one on the right, the Chinese cabbage. So I'd break the leaves off, I would roll them with a rolling pin, and then I would place them around the leg, and I would secure them in place with some Glad wrap, some plastic wrap around the leg. After I did this morning, night, and morning. For two and a half days, after 2.5 days, his swelling had gone completely down in his legs, and he was very, very happy because he'd been to the doctor, they couldn't do nothing. He'd been to the hospital, they couldn't do nothing. So as a desperation, he came to me, and guess what? Cabbage works. You know, God puts these properties in these vegetables that are just spectacular. They just do some beautiful healing. But it's the moisture in here. And by the way, too, when I did that, I secured in plastic, I put huge garbage bags out of his legs because he had an awful lot of swelling that needed to come out. And it came out, and in the morning when he came back on the evening, you could hear him go squish, squish, squish as he was walking because in the plastic bags there was moisture. So I'd just take them off, cut them off, and then just wash his legs and clean them up and put a new fresh one on, and it just did the trick. Another one, I had a lady, she had breast cancer, and I was doing it on the arm, which was so swollen up because of the breast cancer, and I found that she was too late. In the situation she was, it brought out little ulcers there, and I thought, no, I'm going to discontinue this because there is a time when you can do this. If you wait there's a certain time when you have the opportunity to do this poultice in years past, because it'll bring out things with other problems that you don't want. I didn't want her arm to turn ulcerated, so I left it and I let them I just thought, no, this is not the poultice for her. Just remember that. But you can use the cabbage for sinus. You can do it over the sinus. You can do water treatments, which is tomorrow night. But you can do sinus congestion, sprained shoulder, dislocated shoulder, arthritis pain. You can wrap a cabbage leaf over your joint, reduces swollen arms and legs and lymphedema, your sore eyes, your soaked cotton wool induced. You can use for breast cancer, for sciatica, for burns. You can mix it with some Epsom salts or anything. Remember, anything powdery that will mix it with. And it's great for breastfeeding mothers and those who have mastitis. And cabbage juice heals stomach and intestinal complaints. So that's all I've got for you today. And I wanted to share those with you. Now, here's my website. If you want to write that down, I'll just leave that one up for you. And my email, if you want to get in contact with me, backtoeden@aapt.net.au. And the recipesandremedies.com is where your Kaye's recipes is where you get my website. And that's where you, as I said, you can download these. I also have a book here. It's a health training book, which I've got loads and loads of information on you. Now, last time I was there 2 years ago, Pastor Harold made some copies of these and shared them with you. Now, I sell these, but yet to post them to America is quite an expensive thing. So it's going to cost quite a lot of money. I know that. And so if you're interested in these, contact Pastor Harold at the Seven-Day Church there in Colton, and you will find that he will be able to get some copied for you. So I'm trusting you, Pastor Harold, that you'll do that. Okay, he's waving to me. Okay, look, I'll leave you there tonight. And if there's any questions, we can go to our question time now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Kaye. This has been so informative, so helpful, and very practical. You know, they're very practical. So I have a few questions here I wrote down. I have a few questions I wrote down.
Yes.
And the first one is, I just need clarification for the asthma. Did you say potato poultice or onion poultice for asthma?
Onion poultice on the feet.
Okay, onion.
Onion on the feet.
And also, have you ever, or would you ever mix like potato and onion together as a poultice, or not really?
Yes, I would. Look, I normally don't, but you can. There's no rule that says you can't, okay?
And I
I know somebody put potato on a shoulder, a frozen shoulder. They used potato and cayenne, which is not a usual combination because one is a cooling and one is a healing poultice. And she said she had wonderful results with it. It stopped a frozen shoulder.
And I was wondering the same thing, like about a charcoal and clay. Could you mix those together, or would you not recommend it?
No, it would be great because
Okay.
the clay is more sticky. It actually absorbs more together, and it doesn't. It's more. If you mix water with water with charcoal, and the water dries out, it just becomes powder. But it cakes together much more, and you can make a much better paste with charcoal, with clay than you can with charcoal.
Okay, thank you. Now, as far as the cayenne pepper, you said that if you have to take a lot of it, you mix it in soya milk. But what about, you can buy cayenne capsules. Do you ever recommend that?
Okay, they do say that, and I have done that. And that I personally, I am not a person that likes hot food. Now, some of my family, Peter, can handle much more cayenne than I do. I am just not a person. I've never ever been accustomed to handling hot food. And I find even cayenne, I struggle to take a quarter of a teaspoon of cayenne.
Yeah, me too. When you said somebody took 3 tablespoons or teaspoons.
Okay, but she must have got used to it. I know that. But I struggle to take a quarter of a teaspoon, but I can take capsules.
Okay.
It does not have quite the same reaction because when you're putting it in your mouth, immediately that's signaling to your body to release juices, okay? And when you got it down in your stomach, you don't have that signal. But yet you will get some benefits, but you don't get quite the same benefits as you do as if you take it directly.
Okay. Now, as far as the charcoal for teeth whitening, how would you prepare the charcoal if you wanted to whiten your teeth?
Well, I would probably just keep cleaning my teeth with charcoal powder. I tell you that I actually have used charcoal powder, and that you can buy charcoal toothpaste now, but I've used charcoal powder. I've just had a little container with charcoal, my toothbrush, and I've used charcoal powder, and I've cleaned my teeth with it. And then I've used clay, and I've done the same with clay. And can I tell you, if I'm honest, I would much prefer the clay because I have no idea how my hand basin just gets so messy when I clean my teeth with charcoal. There's just charcoal all over the place, and I don't know how it gets
that's
there.
why I asked you, how do you prepare it? Because, my experience, it just flies all over, You
That's
breathe on it.
exactly
You
right.
breathe on it too heavy, and it just flies all over. So,
Yes, that's exactly right.
So I
So
don't know.
I actually, while I said teeth whitening in a charcoal, because that's what it's used for, but I actually do prefer, if I'm going to use that, I actually used clay, a lot of clay. I've got a little container in my bathroom that I have and it's not a big container. I would prefer to put fresh lots in there because I'm actually getting the end of my wet toothbrush, and I'm just putting it into that container of clay, and I just use that and I clean my teeth with it that way.
okay.
And so I don't have a lot in that little container that I have in my bathroom. I would sooner replace it every couple of days than just have a big container of it and just put my toothbrush in it.
Yeah.
And can I tell you that I've done this, I've actually suggested for people, I suggested if you make up a clay paste with 1 part of clay and 3 parts of water, and that's when you can spread it on your body, you can have it ready. You can make it and you can put it in a container in your cupboard, and it's fine. It keeps. It's all right. But some people say, "Oh, look, mine has gone moldy on me," and I said to them, "Well, what have you done?" If you have a container, I don't usually suggest large containers, just a small supply.
Okay.
But if you dig in there with your finger and you apply it, guess what? What the bacteria or the whatever's on your finger will go into that clay. It is so powerful, it will just there, and it will make your clay go moldy. So if you're going to ever get anything out of it, you need to use a spatula to put it on, or you need to make sure that you don't dip your finger in that clay if you've made a mixture of this paste.
So,
Okay, so my suggestion is not to make a large lot but just to get, or use a spatula or something to get it out. Or if you haven't got that, just use the blade of a knife to get it out there. But don't dip your finger in.
okay, so they do sell charcoal toothpaste here. Several companies sell. So I buy that. I don't know how much it helps, but so now for the bentonite clay for liver spots, again, would you make kind of a paste? I saw you'd make a paste, and does that help to remove? Have a lot of liver spots and very self-conscious of them. So you just make a paste with water and just like you're making a mask.
Clay is so powerful that it will actually pull out tattoos. And I did highlight that. I did mention that, but I didn't highlight it. Just realize that if you know some people who've got tattoos and they want them to, because it pulls toxins out. And you see, the ink is a toxin. If you put it on your tattoo, you'll pull it out. But you need to, it's a long process. It's not something you will just put it on once. You might have to do it every night for months.
Okay, so you had something down for cataracts, and I can't read my writing here.
It did say clay, living clay for cataracts.
How would you do that? I have a very, very bad cataract that I'm looking to get surgery, but I let it go for so long that now I've been told that you leave it so long and they really can't help it. So I'm very nervous.
I agree there. It seems there is a time that you can do it. If in early stages, you can hit these things, but if you wait too late, it's, the opportunity is gone. But another thing you can do for cataracts and macular degeneration and cataracts is in the morning you can get those little eye cups. You can put a couple of drops of lemon in with water, and you can do that. Wash your eyes out with that. Now, it will sting. Okay, that's fine. Just remember that it's going to sting. And the other one, in the morning, and then at night time, you do the same with a few drops of pure honey, and you water the honey down, and you put the honey in your eye like that too, and it will sting. Okay, remember that. But yet that will help you with your cataracts. But I do believe you're right. I'm not sure. I haven't heard of anybody who had late stages cataracts come off. But
you're talking to one right now.
Yes, well, I don't know if you can do it with a natural remedy. See, there is sometimes natural remedies. If you don't do it early enough, doesn't work.
Okay.
But for myself, I have no idea, because 2 years ago, and for the last 20 years, I wore glasses. Then all of a sudden, my eyes just changed, and I can read. Sometimes my eyes are getting better and better and better, and I can read most of the time without it. And it's just such an odd thing. And people say, "What have you done?" And I say, "Well, I really don't know. I have no idea." Sometimes it's depending if it's tiny or writing, I do need my glasses, but most of the time I can just read without glasses now. So it's just a strange thing, and I couldn't tell you what I did.
Oh, great. My last question here is, as far as the potato poultices, in the United States, most of our potatoes are GMO. So I was wondering, does it make a difference? I mean, I don't ever eat GMO potatoes. They either have to be organic or they have to say on their non-GMO. But for the poultices, does it really matter that they don't have to be organic? Or non-GMO? Do you have
Can I
a-
tell you that I have used mostly shop bought potatoes. Now we don't have, or we didn't at that stage, and I don't think we have GMO potatoes here.
Yeah,
as
we
yet.
do. All our potatoes are GMO unless they specify.
Okay, but can I tell you, I would avoid them for sure.
Even for the
But
poultice.
I have used normal shop bought potatoes for my poulticing. I haven't used organic ones. Now, can I tell you a story of a friend who worked in a health retreat, and she said they experimented with using cabbage poultices on women. These women were coming in, they had lymphedema in their arms. And they experimented with shop-bought cabbages as opposed to organic cabbages. And they said definitely the organic cabbages had a better reaction, but the other ones worked too.
Okay.
And I believe that it's the same. It's like, as I said to you, charcoal, activated charcoal definitely works better. But all you have is the wood that you've got in your coal of your fire. And that happened to me once. I went to visit my son, and my other son was there visiting. They were there, and he was sick as he had food poisoning. And I went to the fireplace, and I got some coal out, and I banged it up, and I made it into poultice. I hit it with a hammer, and I just rolled it with a rolling pin, and I put it in a blender. I did a few processes, and I gave it to him to drink. And he was just within a quarter of an hour, he came back and he says, "Oh, can I have another drink, please? That's really settled my stomach." And he was in severe agony with stomach cramps and with diarrhea. He had food poisoning really bad. So, and that was just out of the fireplace. So don't think you have to have activated, but yet it is. If you have a supply, get yourself activated charcoal while you can get it, because I believe one day soon you won't be able to get it. Activated charcoal you can only get from a supplier. You can't make activated charcoal yourself.
So just out of curiosity, how do they make activated charcoal as opposed to the charcoal that you got out of the fireplace? What exactly is activated charcoal as opposed to the charcoal that you got out of the fireplace?
Okay, so they take the raw charcoal that they've got out of the fireplace, but they get it and they subject it, they put it in a big kiln, and they subject it to water, to steam. Sometimes they subject to chemicals, which are not harsh chemicals, they're just normal chemicals which are safe. But they subject it to steam. Now that steam goes into the molecule of the charcoal, and it actually burns deeper. The crevices and the holes that are in a charcoal molecule are burnt much deeper. So it gives a much stronger absorption to it. So it becomes magnetically, it becomes much stronger. Because those holes, there's much more surface area, there's much more just attraction there that is in that molecule. But as I said, if you only have the normal one, don't have that one.
Okay.
But you can only do that other one. You can only do that activated one by processes when they have this enormous big kiln, or this where they can inject steam into it under high pressure. And I mean, it's like at 800 degrees centigrade or something like that, or Fahrenheit, beg your pardon, that they put it in there. So, like you can't make it that hot in your own home. No way. It can only be done
Is there anyone Zooming that would like to have a question? You can unmute yourself or raise your hand and ask the question at this moment. Well, anybody make a decision of asking a question. I would like to make a comment. And in my practice, I learned not to put water on charcoal powder, but put charcoal powder on water, or you'll get it on your face.
True. Yes. Look, I usually put charcoal in if I'm going to drink it, I put it in a glass jar with some water and glass jar, put the lid on tight and shake it up and down and then drink it. To me, that's the easiest.
Yes, it is. Okay, if we don't have any questions at this moment, that's Betty had a question.
Yeah.
That you have a question? Okay, go ahead, Betty.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I thank you for this information. It's wonderful. It's pure gold. When I chew raw food, a salad or carrots even, my temples swell up like little golf balls. What's causing that? What causes that inflammation? The temples. Probably in front of the temples. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
No, I'm sorry. I've never heard of that either.
Okay, so that's one question. Number two is, so how do we get the slides of your PowerPoints here? If I wanted to print them off here, is it possible? Your slides, your PowerPoints.
Yes, if you wanted to, yes.
No problem?
Yeah.
Okay. The other question is for Pastor Cortez. You don't have to print those pages out, but how do we get the information for the book? I can print them out at this end. How do we go about doing that? Your book.
Yes, give us a call and we discuss that.
Okay, we discuss it. Last question is, so anyway, I'm 76 this year, and I'm getting like a Buddha belly. You know how older people do, that's kind of inflamed. And so I guess listening to you, the castor oil pack would probably, well, first of all, I don't know what's causing it. I see ladies my age walking around with these stomachs. And so I guess you can do charcoal packs, you can do clay, you can do castor oil, but what's causing the inflammation, to make it, I call it a Buddha belly. I don't know what else to say. Enlarged, yes.
Yeah, okay, but you're toxic. That's the basic thing. You've got to get rid of toxic, your whole body. Don't just think it's just your belly. Yes, it's manifesting in your belly, but your whole body. We have to go through, get yourself detox, and it'll just naturally come down.
So when you say detox, I've done like the Epsom salt drinks with lemon in there for 5 days, and then juices. And what are you meaning when you say detox?
Well, look, I mean, it's just a general detox. You just get into a healthy lifestyle, and it's just accumulation of a lifestyle of doing what you've done and eating what you've eaten. And I understand. I mean, and sometimes you just got to accept it. This is the way it is, because it's very hard to get rid of weight after you're like 50, when you're 50 or 60. You find people who can go on a diet when they're older, just don't get rid of weight. Your body metabolism just doesn't break down. Okay? And so you've got to realize that what you are, you might just have to accept this is what I am and accept it. That's another way to start. But the other thing is, you need to just always be on a mindful of trying to keep yourself healthy and watch your weight. Just make sure that you don't get yourself to the stage where if you notice yourself putting on a few pounds, get yourself and make sure that you work it off and do something and exercise and put yourself onto a regime where you realize, and don't eat too much. Something for years and years now, I have lived, and I love it. We don't eat an evening meal, and I haven't eaten. Look, if I go out, and I'm saying I don't say I never do, but it's rare I do. I just don't eat a meal. I have a breakfast, and then I have a lunch, and I haven't eaten. And I've eaten like this for nearly 30 years. And something, I believe that is such a blessing to us. Such a blessing, because your body then can recover. Your body can break down everything that at night time I go to bed, I don't have food in my stomach. It's something that in your body can heal. You see, most people don't realize if you're eating an evening meal, let's just say for purposes, you eat your evening meal at 6 p.m.
Ask something.
And then you have your breakfast at, say, 7 a.m. Did you know that it normally takes at least 12 hours before your body goes into that cleansing process in your body? So therefore, if you've got 6 o'clock in the evening till 6 o'clock in the morning, so you've only had 1 hour of cleansing in your body. And you know something, it's really interesting, because when I first started this, I had never, ever heard of the word intermittent fasting. But did you know what? A lot of the health people on the internet now, and the health doctors, it doesn't matter what diet they're pushing, whether it's the keto diet or whatever diet they're pushing, so many of the people are saying, do intermittent fasting. And I didn't know that it was called that. We just had 2 meal a day plan. That's what we learned when I started it.
I've done that for 30 to 40 years. It's just 2 meals. Yeah, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
It just seems when I take a bite of food, then the stomach's, I guess it's the gut, the leaky gut or microbiome or all that stuff. Take that into consideration. But my sister's sitting here next to me, so she has these bunions. And on top of the bunions, to the side of the bunions, calluses are growing, and the calluses are there, I know, because the bunions are pressing against, and it's killing her. Yeah. So she's this 5'2" girl, but these bunions are huge. So anyway, any recommendations? I don't know. It's a deformity. It's a deformity now.
Yeah, sometimes you have luck with them, but sometimes you don't. You can put, sometimes they say, oh, look, you can put onions on them. Sometimes you can do castor oil. Sometimes you can do all these things on it, but sometimes they just don't. You're stuck. I can't tell you why. I really don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. We're so blessed to have you.
Right. Thank you.
We're so blessed. Okay.
All right.
Well, if you want to
one more question.
So, okay, I find that I got rid of every speck of gluten out of my diet, and it's really helped me a lot with everything, including the extended belly. That's my sister Betty. And so I think getting rid of gluten. And also I wanted to ask your opinion, Kaye. There's a liver cleanse that's quite popular where you take Epsom salts for 2 times, and then you take a combination of olive oil and grapefruit juice, and you drink that up, and then the next day you drink some more Epsom salts. Have you ever heard of that? It's a very harsh cleanse, but I've tried it, and it's really, really helped me a lot. And I just want to know if you've heard it, and if you have any thoughts on that, if it's good or bad or whatever.
Look, I've only had I've heard anecdotally about it. I haven't personally tried it that way because I have never had problems with my liver. But it's like something that people have done it, yes, and they swear by it. And people say, well, and I'm not one to say, well, it's no good. I think if it's helping you, and like you said that it's helped you, great. But, you're right. Some people can't take this sort of thing. You just need to go carefully on these things. Realize, and you've got to work out, will I be able to do it or won't I be able to do it? And often it's got to do with your mindset too. If you believe, I believe this will help me, and you can go ahead and try it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, the time is moving forward, and we would like to have a word of prayer at this moment. And if you that are participating can bow your heads at this moment. Our gracious Father that is in heaven, we are so thankful for your kindness and for the time you had provide for us to learn about the natural remedies that you intended for all of us. We ask traveling mercies for those who have to go places, and also good rest over tonight, and that whatever we have to do with ourselves, cleansing our body, also we may include cleansing our mind and our spiritual life.
Amen.
Thank you, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sister Kaye. And I thank first God for the presentation. And we'll see you tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Be promptly. We're going to start on time. God bless you.
Okay.
What's it about tomorrow? What's the topic? Pastor?
Sister Kaye, what is the topic tomorrow?
I'm going to talk about Nehemiah, and also I'm going to talk about water treatments.
Oh, thank you.
Excuse me, Sister Kaye, are you in Australia? I have a brother that lives out of Sydney, and I wondered how he could hook up to you.
Yes.
Are you? He's in Avondale, Cornbong, and so how would? Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Albury, New South Wales, which is quite a distance, probably about 8 hours from Avondale.
Okay, 8 hours.
But I'm still in the same state, but very
Yes.
close. I'm right on the border to Victoria.
So what time is it there at
Quarter
your
to
place?
3:45 in the afternoon.
Okay, so that would work out. Okay. So he would hook up with you, I guess, going through the Colton Church. Is that right? Like I did.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate
Although,
it.
as I said, if he wanted to, he could get. At this stage, I don't have any. I used to do programs, and somebody put them on the internet as, like poulticing and all that sort of thing. But I must have been banned or something, because they all have been taken down.
Oh.
I have no idea why. And I've just never bothered to put them back up again.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the way. If he wants to contact me, he can go onto my website and just read what I've done. And that's possibly the best way to contact
Or
me.
email you. He can email you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'm into emails.
Yeah. You don't want to give me the phone number, do you?
Well,
The
it's
email will work. The email will work.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're right. You're right. But it's on the front of my newsletter anyhow, if you go on the website and download it.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Good night. Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Good
night.
night. Good night.
Okay then.
Go ahead. There you go.
Yeah, my sister, she's very difficult for me. I had to distance myself.
Sister Kaye is very nice.
Very diplomatic.
She won't take offense.
No.
That's good.
She's
That's good.
This was amazing. I learned so much. So it sounds like she's saying that she did ask if she could get a copy of the overheads. And I heard her say yes. I think if you email
She needs to email Sister Kaye.
and then Sister Kaye
And
will
Sister
send it.
Kaye will provide her PowerPoint to her. Because on my end, I only send you the pictures.
Yeah,
You can
thank you
you
so
can send your
much.
pictures to your sister, I got all of them except one, and they're excellent.
Yeah, very,
And
very knowledgeable.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, well, thank you so much. I talked to my son today, and I told him we praying for him, and he said, I just knew it. He said, I feel so, amazing. He's being able to handle everything. He's in a very delicate situation, not only that, but dealing with the wife, that she did that, and he has to confront her, and and he said everything. He said, I just feel the power, Mommy. He thanked me so much. So I thank you.
Yeah.
Because
It's difficult when somebody else that has nothing to do it has the power over decisions on a relative, the father, right?
yeah, and the fact that she didn't consult him, so she was so happy that she could, because the bottom line is, and my son knows it, that if she didn't want to take care of him if he survived, and that would be an awful lot of work.
And the thing is that she
didn't want to have to keep driving out. I guess it was an hour trip.
She wasn't in contact with his son,
which is my son,
to coordinate the situation, because his son came first before her.
Yeah, because
and it was
my son's
important.
50 years old, and she's only been married to him for 2 years.
And he was important to his dad. And it's like,
so it's a very not a good situation, but he said, Mom, he said, I feel the power. And so I said, with some things you might have to get the pastor to intervene, because she's, obviously she's kind of showing her true colors.
Well, I'll tell you this.
Thank you so much for praying. I just believe in prayer, and that's what it's there for, to help us.
When we have a death in the family, a very slight of a very little things hurts. Anything hurts. When my mother died,
it was just recently, or was it your
4 years now?
And what did she die from?
She died on she had multiple